The Forbidden Boundary. Senior xenoarchaeologist Thela Vos stood before the holographic display, her four slender fingers tracing the peculiar boundary that had captured her attention for the last decade. The massive star chart projected in the center of the Galactic Archive's main chamber was a marvel of scientific achievement. A comprehensive mapping of 97.6% of the known galaxy, meticulously documented over the Concordat's 5,000-year existence. Yet there it was, an irregular spiral arm segment approximately 15,000 light-years in length, conspicuously empty save for a simple designation that had consumed her professional life. Restricted Zone. Human territorial space. "You're going to wear out the projector with your staring, Thela," came a voice from behind her. Qasim Invoro, director of Galactic Archives and her direct superior, approached with the characteristic clicking gait of his insectoid species. 23 expedition logs. Qasim, Thela replied without turning. 23 separate vessels that approached the human boundary in the last century. 3 returned with completely wiped data cores. 7 reported catastrophic system failures. 5 simply disappeared. She finally turned to face him, her bioluminescent skin pulsing with agitation. And the rest? The rest returned with crews suffering from inexplicable psychological trauma. Qasim's compound eyes reflected the blue glow of the holographic display. The Concordat made special provisions for the humans, Thela. They maintain absolute territorial sovereignty. That decision was made at the highest levels. But why? Thela pressed. Even the Hive Mind Collective allows basic mapping. The quantum gestal permitted surveys despite their dimensional sensitivities. Only humans refuse entirely. Perhaps Qasim's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. That should tell you something about the wisdom of your fascination. But Thela couldn't let it go. After her shift ended, she retreated to her private laboratory deep within the archives, where she'd been secretly analyzing artifacts. Objects recovered from a handful of successful explorations into what was now human space, conducted centuries before humanity's sudden arrival on the galactic stage. The artifacts defied conventional analysis. Some appeared to bend light at impossible angles. Others exhibited quantum properties that violated established physical laws. One particular object, a crystalline sphere no larger than her palm, seemed to exist partially outside normal spacetime. Computer, display historical exploration records, pre-human contact era, focusing on the region now designated as human space, she commanded. The screen filled with data from the early exploration vessels that had once freely traversed the region. They depicted beautiful worlds rich with resources and unusual stellar formations. Then, approximately 300 years ago, the records changed dramatically. Vessels began reporting navigation difficulties, sensor malfunctions, and reality fluctuations, a term never properly defined in the logs. And then, seemingly overnight in cosmic terms, humans appeared, a supposedly primitive species that somehow advanced from rudimentary space travel to controlling a vast territory in less than a century. "What are you hiding?" Thela whispered to the empty air. "Probably something worth staying away from," came a voice from the doorway. Thela jumped, her skin flashing bright yellow in surprise. Drex Kalmar, a Satorian engineer with midnight blue scales and calculating eyes, leaned against the frame. "Stars, Drex. Announce yourself. And miss that light show." He grinned, revealing rows of sharp teeth. "Besides, your security protocols are embarrassingly basic for someone engaged in clear violations of Concordat directives." Thela's heart raced. "How long have you known?" "Long enough," Drex replied, pushing away from the door to examine her workstation. "The question is, what do you plan to do with all this research? Writing a paper that will never be published? Or something more interesting?" Thela studied him carefully. "What would you consider interesting?" Drex picked up the crystalline sphere, turning it in his scaled hands with surprising gentleness. "Well, I happen to know someone with a modified survey vessel, stealth capabilities, advanced sensors, untraceable quantum signature. The kind of ship that could slip past human monitoring networks. You're suggesting an unauthorized expedition into restricted space? Absolutely. His eyes glittered. Unless you're content with questions without answers. She wasn't. It took 2 months to assemble the team. Besides Thela and Drex, they recruited Marina Lox, a former Concordat intelligence operative whose telepathic abilities might prove invaluable. Gortek, a massive Vuldarian whose species' natural resistance to radiation and psychic influence made him the perfect security specialist. And Zin, an enigmatic data analyst whose quantum-entangled brain could process information faster than any computer. Their vessel, the Stellar Seeker, departed under the pretext of a routine archaeological survey of ancient Prothean ruins in a nearby sector. Once beyond monitoring range, Drex activated the modifications that would mask their true destination. Approaching human territorial boundary, Marina announced from the navigation console, her voice tight with tension. Passive sensors only. As agreed. The view screen showed nothing unusual, just stars and the peaceful emptiness of space. No warning beacons, no patrol vessels, nothing to indicate they were about to cross into forbidden territory. This is unexpected, Zin commented, their crystalline form shimmering with uncertainty. Most species mark their boundaries clearly. Humans aren't most species, Gortek rumbled, massive arms crossed over his chest. They're weird. They hadn't traveled more than 3 light years past the boundary when the first anomalies appeared. The ship's instruments flickered, artificial gravity fluctuated subtly, and the quantum positioning system reported impossible spatial coordinates. Something's affecting our sensors, Drex reported, scaled fingers flying across the engineering console. It's as if the fundamental constants of physics are different here. Thela felt vindication and apprehension in equal measure. Can you compensate? Partially, Drex replied, but these aren't typical distortions. It's almost like deliberate interference. They proceeded cautiously, documenting everything. On the second day, they detected an unusual structure, not a human outpost as expected, but something far older. A massive crystalline array, similar in composition to the artifacts Thela had studied, orbited an unremarkable dwarf star. That architecture doesn't match any known human design, Thela observed, excitement overriding caution. It predates them by millennia, at least. Closer examination revealed more surprises. The array was actively functioning, emitting patterns of energy that seemed to stabilize the surrounding space, and it bore unmistakable signs of maintenance, recent maintenance. Humans didn't build this, Thela confirmed after analyzing the data, but they're maintaining it. Why? As they ventured deeper, they discovered more arrays, all with similar properties. The spatial anomalies intensified. Occasionally, stars seemed to flicker momentarily out of existence, and the ship's chronometers desynchronized from each other by microseconds, a phenomenon that should have been impossible. On the 4th day, they intercepted coded transmissions between what appeared to be human vessels. Zin managed to decrypt fragments. Boundary integrity at 92%. Sector 7 shows thinning. Deploy Anchor Team Delta. What are they anchoring? Gortek wondered aloud. The answer came sooner than expected. As they approached the 5th array, proximity alarms blared. A massive distortion appeared directly ahead, not on sensors, but visibly through the view screen. Space itself seemed to fold and tear, revealing glimpses of something else, something that defied description, with geometries that hurt the eyes and colors that shouldn't exist. Full reverse, Drex shouted, but the engine struggled against the pull of the anomaly. Suddenly, a sleek vessel appeared, moving with impossible speed. Human design, unmistakably military. It positioned itself between the Stellar Seeker and the Rift, emitting a focused energy beam that somehow stabilized the spatial tear. "We're being hailed," Marina reported, surprise evident in her voice. The view screen activated to show a human female, her expression stern but not hostile. Her uniform bore insignia none of them recognized. Unauthorized vessel, you have entered restricted space and triggered a Class 3 breach. Standard protocol calls for immediate neutralization. Thela stepped forward. I am Senior Xenorchaeologist Thela Voss. We are conducting a research expedition. We mean no harm. The human's expression didn't change. Your intentions are irrelevant. Your presence is destabilizing the containment field. She paused, then to everyone's surprise, continued. However, now that you've seen this, neutralization may be counterproductive. Prepare for emergency translation to Anchor Station Epsilon. Do not attempt to maneuver or power weapons, or we will be forced to take more permanent measures. Before Thela could respond, the human vessel emitted a field that enveloped the stellar seeker. The stars blurred, and reality seemed to shift around them. What's happening? Gortek demanded, reaching for his weapon. I believe. Thela replied, watching as an enormous station materialized before them. We're about to get answers. The truth beyond the stars. Anchor Station Epsilon dwarfed any artificial structure Thela had ever encountered. Unlike the sleek, aesthetic designs favored by most Concordat species, the station was brutally functional, a massive array of interconnected modules, energy conduits, and what appeared to be enormous stabilization pylons extending into the surrounding space. Their vessel was guided to a docking bay where a reception committee awaited, 6 humans in the same unmarked uniforms, their expressions carefully neutral. The lead figure, a tall man with dark skin and penetrating eyes, stepped forward as they disembarked. I am Commander Jason Chen, Rift Security Authority. You will surrender all recording devices and weapons before proceeding. His tone left no room for negotiation. Gortek tensed, but Thela placed a restraining hand on his massive arm. We'll comply. We came for knowledge, not conflict. After being thoroughly scanned and relieved of their equipment, they were escorted through a series of security checkpoints to a conference room with a large viewport. Through it, Thela could see the spatial anomaly they'd encountered earlier, now much larger and more controlled, contained within a complex energy field generated by the station. Commander Chen studied them with calculating eyes. In 300 years, you're only the 9th unauthorized expedition to penetrate far enough to require this conversation. The others learned to respect our boundaries. Will you? That depends on what you tell us. Thela replied evenly. The Galactic Concordat has a right to know what exists in this region of space. Chen's laugh held no humor. Rights. Interesting concept when dealing with existential threats. He activated a holographic display showing a 3-dimensional map of human territory. Throughout the region, countless red points pulsed ominously. Each marker represents a rift similar to the one you encountered. Tears in the fabric of reality itself. We call them breaches. Thela studied the display, her scientific mind racing. These aren't natural phenomena. No, Chen confirmed. They're wounds in space-time, created long before humans achieved interstellar travel, before we even left our solar system. Drex leaned forward. Created by whom? We don't know. We call them the precursors. They left behind technology, the arrays you observed, designed to contain and manage the breaches. When we began exploring beyond our solar system, we discovered these ancient systems already failing after millennia of operation. The implications hit Thela like a physical blow. The artifacts I've been studying. Chen nodded. Components of the containment technology. Some were discovered by other species before we claimed this territory. They don't understand what they have. And what exactly is on the other side of these breaches? Marina asked, her telepathic senses clearly disturbed by something she couldn't quite perceive. Chen's expression darkened. We have a theoretical designation. Void entities, non-corporeal consciousnesses existing in dimensions beyond our comprehension. They perceive our reality as we might perceive a 2-dimensional drawing, something to be manipulated, altered, or destroyed at will. You're containing them, Zin observed, their crystalline structure pulsing with rapid calculations. The anchors, the arrays, you're maintaining a barrier between realities. With increasing difficulty, Chen confirmed, the void entities are becoming more active, more determined. Each breach represents a potential incursion point. If even one fully opens, he didn't need to finish. The implications were clear, an existential threat beyond anything the Concordat had ever faced. Why keep this secret? Thela demanded. The combined resources of all Concordat species could what? Chen interrupted sharply. Panic. Start a galactic exodus. Or worse, attempt to study or exploit the breaches. We've seen the records of what happened before we established containment protocols. Your own archives document the unexplained disappearances, the psychological trauma, the reality fluctuations. Drex's scales darkened with realization. You didn't just discover this technology. You adapted to it. Your entire species evolved to handle it. Chen's gaze shifted to the engineer. Perceptive. Human neurophysiology possesses a unique characteristic. Our brains naturally filter perceptions that would drive other species to madness. We can perceive the breaches without immediate psychological damage. It's why we advanced so quickly once we discovered the technology. Our minds were compatible. So humanity's rapid technological development, Thela began, was accelerated by necessity. Chen finished. We didn't have a choice. Either we mastered the containment technology, or our entire region of the galaxy would have been compromised. The Concordat granted us territorial sovereignty not out of respect, but out of fear of what happened to their own exploration vessels. Gortek, silent until now, rumbled deeply. You became the guardians no one asked for, or thanked. Chen added with a grim smile. But we're reaching our limits. The breaches are growing more numerous, more unstable. Our resources are stretched thin. Thela looked again at the viewport, watching the swirling chaos beyond the containment field with new understanding. What happens if you fail? Chen's voice was matter of fact. Reality as we understand it would be rewritten. Consciousness as we know it would end. Not destruction. Transformation into something unrecognizable and incompatible with our existence. A heavy silence fell over the room as the enormity of what they'd discovered sank in. Humanity, the newest and supposedly least advanced species in the Concordat, had been silently bearing a burden that affected all sentient life. Why show us this? Marina finally asked. Why not simply eliminate us as your protocol suggested? Because we're losing, Chen admitted with stark honesty. Containment is failing faster than we can repair it. We need help, but not from bureaucrats or politicians who would debate while reality unravels. We need scientists, engineers, and explorers who understand the stakes. Thela felt the weight of his words. You're recruiting us. I'm offering you a choice, Chen corrected. Return to Concordat space with a carefully edited memory of a routine border violation, or stay and help us find a more permanent solution to the breach crisis. Your expertise could be valuable. Drex looked at Thela. This is considerably more interesting than artifact analysis. Zin's crystalline form shimmered with what might have been excitement. The computational challenges alone are fascinating. Gortek simply shrugged his massive shoulders. Better than guarding museum pieces. Marina hesitated longest. The Concordat should know. They will, Chen promised. Eventually. But on our terms, when we have solutions to offer alongside problems. Thela considered everything she'd learned. The artifacts that had puzzled her for years now contextualized. The mysterious human isolation explained, and a threat more profound than anything in recorded history. We'll help, she decided, but we'll need access to all your research, all your data. Chen nodded. You'll have it. Welcome to the Rift Security Authority. Xenorchaeologist. Let's hope your outside perspective helps us see something we've missed. As they were led deeper into the station, Thela watched through viewports as human ships patrolled near the contained breach, tireless guardians against a threat the galaxy never knew it faced. The map ended at human space not because of politics or xenophobia, but because humanity stood at the edge of understood reality, holding back the tide of chaos beyond. For the first time, she understood why no one returned with answers. Some truths were too vast, too terrible to be casually shared. But perhaps with their help, humanity's lonely vigil might one day end, not in catastrophe, but in triumph. Until then, the galactic map would continue to end at human space, and now Thela understood why no one dared to ask why.